The Redmi Note 9 Pro is finally in the house, and with a price tag of Rs 12,999, the phone is looking pretty competitive. Now, there just so happens to be another device that is priced exactly the same, which is the Realme 6. So I decided why not put both the phones against one another, especially in the camera department. Hey guys, this is Varun from Guiding Tech, and today I'll be putting the Redmi Note 9 Pro's camera against the test with the Realme 6 to see which phone offers the best camera performance under Rs 13,000. Let's get started. Now, kicking things off in the daylight shots, you can see that there is not a lot of difference between both the images. Obviously, this is a hard shot to capture with the sun directly peeping in behind the leaves, so both the phones have to rely extensively on HDR. Now, as we've come to expect from budget devices, both the phones do over sharpen the subject here, so there's not much to separate both the shots. However, pixel peeping into the top left portion of the image onto the bark of the tree, you can see that the Note 9 Pro adds a reddish tint, while Realme, well, it does manage to keep the colors almost intact. It also increases the contrast, making the image overall a tad bit more darker. Next up, there's this shot of some leaves, which kind of gives away the way this whole video is going to progress. Now you can see that the Note 9 Pro captures a more warmer image, while Realme, it goes for a more neutral tone. Now I'll let you guys be the judge on what kind of color profile you guys fancy. That said, one stark difference that you can see here on both the shots is in terms of details. Now when you zoom into the leaves, you'll notice that the Note 9 Pro does a much better job of preserving the veins while Realme softens the image a bit. Okay, so preserving it might be a wrong term here because the phone is obviously relying on over sharpening as well. But what I'm trying to say here is that overall the image does look a little bit more crisper and more detailed to the eye. So there's that. Now while we're on the topic of detailed shots, take a look at this one. At first glance, there's pretty much nothing to separate both the shots apart from the fact that the Redmi's shot is a bit warmer while Realme is more true to color. Now both the shots are amazing, and yes, there is not a lot separating both the shots. That said, I mean, if you had to choose one, I think Redmi does just a tad bit better here. Lastly, there's another shot that basically sums up what we've seen so far from both the devices. Once again, both the images are equally good, with the Note 9 Pro producing a more warm image. However, this time, the saturation boost is also quite noticeable, something that was previously lost in the overall warmth tone. Now, it's not like Realme does not saturate the image at all, like the blues are definitely brighter here, but then again, in comparison, the Realme 6's shot looks closer to what I was actually seeing from the eye. Now, another part that is saturated a lot here are the trees, which pretty much explains what I've been talking about in overall terms of warmth and saturation on both the devices. Basically, both the phones are consistently great, and apart from some differences in terms of color profiling, both the shots equally look great and you can go with either of them without regretting. Now moving on to some perspective shots, let's take a look at this shot of a tree. Not to sound like a broken record, but once again you'll see Redmi producing a warmer image while Realme goes for a neutral tone. That said, in terms of details, both the shots are equally good at the first glance, though once you peep into the main bark, you'll see that Realme has more details here. Now it could be due to the bigger sensor or over sharpening or maybe both, but the image definitely looks more crisper. However, switching to the ultra-wide camera, there are some different behavioral changes to be seen. For starters, look how much saturation Realme is doing now, especially to the leaves. Also, if you zoom into the bottom left corner of the image, you'll notice that Realme has, well, killed the highlights there, making the image quite dark. That said, where it does excel is in the HDR. Yes, Realme manages to keep the HDR turned on even in the ultra-wide mode, so big props to that. As for the Redmi device, well, the colors are slightly off the charts here, so I mean, it's not a good image overall. Another example of this perspective shot is with this water tower. At 1x zoom, once again, both the images are equally good with Redmi warming the colors. However, it does capture the trees better as well, while Realme dulls them out, so there's that. Now when you move on to 2x zoom, you'll notice that while both the images look equally good, Realme does capture in more details overall. The texture and the structure is just way better. However, one thing that irks me is that if you zoom into the black pipe in the center, you'll see that Realme, well, it creates a halo effect there. It's something that we see on a lot of phones, to be honest, and while it's of zero significance per se, the fact that the Note 9 Pro eliminates that halo is worth pointing out. Okay, now let's talk about full res images. Now, before we actually see the shots, one thing that's worth highlighting here is while the Redmi Note 9 Pro has a 48 megapixel sensor, the Realme 6 has a 64 megapixel. So obviously details will be bigger or better on the Realme 6 because it will be capturing a bigger image. I mean, that is something to be expected. And you can take a look for it yourself right now. Simply zooming into the sector board in the center and at 100% crop, you'll see the difference that both the images create. With Realme, obviously you're able to zoom in further and get a more crisp shot, while with the Redmi Note 9 Pro at 100% crop, the text does get a tad bit soft. It's still readable for sure, but quite easily the result is better on the Realme 6. That said, let's zoom out for a bit and look at the colors for a moment. The Redmi Note 9 Pro once again goes for a warmer and a more saturated color tone, highlighted very well by a lot of factors actually. The road, the yellows on the divider, and most importantly the blues. That said, I'll be very honest, the saturation here actually looks pretty appealing, and I know for sure that a lot of you guys would like this shot more. I mean, just at the first glance. Personally though, I prefer to stick with realistic colors, which is why I would side with Realme here, but that's just a very personal call here. Now, speaking of personal calls, let's be very realistic. You may not agree with all of my perceptions here, and that's perfectly alright. And I mean, everyone has their own opinion, which is why we always have a download link to all the full res images that we've shot in the description box below. So go ahead, check them out, download them, look at them, compare the images for yourself, and feel free to comment your opinion on the images. I mean, I would love to see what our community thinks of the images and what kind of results they would like to see and what kind of results you guys actually find better. Okay, now moving on to the macro photography, one thing that I have to say here is that the Redmi Note 9 Pro actually has a bigger 5 megapixel sensor here as compared to the Realme 6's 2 megapixel sensor. And frankly, this is one of those cases where the megapixels actually count. I mean, you can see the results in front of your screen, and while Realme does capture good shots, the Redmi shots are just way better. It has more details, allows you to zoom in a little bit more, and I mean, the overall image definitely looks more crisp. For instance, in this next shot of the Red Fort on a 500 rupee note, you can zoom in quite a lot on the topmost section and you can easily differentiate between each and every segment of the structure, while on the Realme photo, well, things get a little bit hazy. It's quite obvious that Realme is relying on over sharpening here, and to be honest, I would any day pick the Redmi Note 9 Pro's result here. Now let's talk about some human shots. Like you'll see, once again the shots are pretty much the same. Also, as highlighted already, Redmi once again goes for a more warmer and saturated tone. Now turning on the portrait mode, and once again the results remain pretty much the same. In terms of edge detection, both the shots are equally good and the bokeh also feels equally natural in both the shots. Honestly, there isn't a lot separating both the images here. That said, moving on to a portrait shot that I took of Ashish, and now we finally have a stark difference. Even in the standard mode, you can see that Realme has a far better dynamic range looking at the background. Also, look at Ashish's t-shirt in the Redmi Note 9 Pro shot. That phone just seems to love blues a lot and is just saturating the overall image quite a lot. Now turn on the portrait mode and you'll notice that Redmi completely blows the backdrop away while still continuing to saturate the image. Now while the overall competition has been quite close overall, this is one area where Realme definitely gets the win. Now moving on to rear video footage, both the phones support recording up to 4K 30fps, though to get the best stabilization on offer, I've tested these out at 1080p at 30fps. Now there's no OIS here, but the EIS on the Note 9 Pro is definitely taking a lead here. A weird point to note is that the footage kind of looked even more stable while recording, but even so, I'm still quite satisfied with the overall result. I mean, it's not like Realme isn't trying to hide the jerks, but the overall video looks much smoother on the Note 9 Pro. Now, another thing worth pointing out is that the video is definitely saturated and warmer on the Note 9 Pro, but not as much as you would think. The leaves were actually on the warmer side, but yeah, Redmi does push them a little to the brighter side nonetheless. Then again, I would pick it over the flatter colors that Realme produces that aren't close to the real thing, which is weird. By the way, Redmi, although it has already won this round, this is without even mentioning the biggest arsenal in Redmi's backpack, which is the Pro Video Mode. I mean, the kind of features that this phone offers for professional videographers is just insane. And if you're someone who's actually, well, creative and more serious about videography on a smartphone, the Redmi Note 9 Pro is especially the best pick for you. Now moving on to the front camera, and I took a couple of shots in different conditions. In this case, the sun was in the background, which makes it a tough shot for any camera, to be honest. And you can clearly see that Realme 6 keeps the HDR on even in this condition and manages to still maintain major portions of the backdrop. Yes, it's not perfect, but definitely better than the result produced by the Note 9 Pro, which overexposes everything. That said, turning the portrait mode on brings both the phones to pretty much the same level now, since the background gets blown away on both the shots. Honestly, there seems to be hardly a difference here. They're both pretty average portrait shots, to be honest. Okay, now moving on to more idle conditions. In this next shot, the sun was directly on my face, or as we all like to call it, sun-kissed. The Redmi Note 9 Pro goes for a subtle, saturated color tone, which looks appealing, but that's pretty much it. The Realme 6 takes the lead in terms of dynamic range, maintains the backdrop, and pixel peeping into my beard shows you just how detailed the shot is. That said, once again turn the portrait mode on and both the images are brought to a same level. Realme cannot get the HDR on in the portrait mode, and right now both the shots look pretty much the same, with Redmi's shot being slightly warmer. Now coming on to selfie videos, this is actually a tough call to make. Both the phones have one clear advantage, which basically dictates which kind of phone will be better suited for your purposes. The Redmi Note 9 Pro focuses primarily on the subject, going for a slight but appealing saturation. However, it blows the background completely. As for the Realme 6, well, it does a great job of maintaining the backdrop, but my face here looks absolutely bad. I mean, it's got a super reddish tone on top of it that definitely does not look good at all. Okay, so the way I see it, I think it basically boils down to your preferences. If you want your viewers to have a focus on just your face, the Redmi Note 9 Pro is definitely the better pick here. However, if you want a camera that maintains a balance between the foreground and the background, obviously the Realme 6 is a better option, I would say. Now moving on to low light shots, take a look at this one. This shot was taken on the default mode and the image definitely looks better on the Redmi Note 9 Pro. I mean, yes, it does saturate as always, but the Realme 6 is overexposing certain areas of the images. On the whole, it's a very close call, but yeah, I would slide with Redmi here. That's it, turn on the night mode and the table's tone. Redmi takes the saturation and warmth levels quite far, making the image look super unnatural. Realme 6's shot, on the other hand, looks much better now, though if you pixel peep into the sign hoarding at the top, you can notice a bit of graininess pop up. Now in this next shot of leaves with a bit of artificial lights, you can see that once again the Note 9 Pro has better highlights here, while the Realme 6's image is a tad bit darker. However, the colors are actually more close to the real thing on the Realme shot once again. That said, once we turn on the night mode, you can see just how unrealistic the Note 9 Pro's shot look. I mean, this is primarily due to a mix of both oversharpening and oversaturating. Okay, now this is my favorite shot of the lot. In the normal mode only, you can see the contrasting difference between both the shots, with Realme once again rendering realistic colors while the Note 9 Pro goes for a lot of warmth and saturation. Also, pixel peeping into the branding below Rasta, you'll see that Redmi's image is quite soft, while Realme, well, it has done a pretty good job here. Now, if you turn on the night mode, the only thing holding Realme back is the grains, but even then, it is a much better shot than the Note 9 Pro. Redmi goes for a lot of saturation and warmth, and the result is quite far from the real thing. Also, one more thing that I would like to point out here is that notice how the color of the Rasta branding changes in the night mode, how it just goes to blue. Well, I figured that this is something that almost all smartphones, not just budget but even flagship phones, do with their night mode. Though interestingly, I was also carrying another phone while doing this camera comparison, and that phone was able to retain the whites even in the night mode. Wanna know which one? Well, get subscribed and I'll tell you what pretty soon. So, what did we learn here? Well, for starters, Redmi has stuck to its guns and stuck with its tried and tested formula of relying on warmer and oversaturated actually not oversaturate, but over sharpened images. And while that formula did work exceptionally great on the Redmi Note 8 Pro, on the Note 9 Pro, the results are, well, quite extreme to be honest. Now, I can totally see a lot of you guys actually liking the results produced with the overall colors boosted, and that's completely fine because for a lot of you guys, that saves you the process of actually editing an image, and that's okay. So while colors might be a subjective thing, in terms of details, Realme 6 definitely has the win here. But when you go for videos, I mean, the Redmi Note 9 Pro is hands down the winner. Well, that was it. Now, I said it before and I'll say it once again. We at Guiding Tech do not do paid reviews or paid camera comparison or any sort of comparisons, to be honest. We never do that and we stick to our guns for that. And if you ever disagree with our analysis, that's completely fine. We have a download link to all the images, like I've highlighted before as well. Just download them, compare the images for yourself, and feel free to comment your critical analysis in the comments below. I am sure I would love to have a detailed discussion with you guys, and I'm more than happy to welcome your opinion of it as well. So anyway, I'll be looking forward to seeing more comments from you guys to see what kind of camera results you guys prefer and which phone you would actually buy if you're interested in just the camera. Would it be the Redmi Note 9 Pro or the Realme 6? Feel free to comment that below as well. This is Varun from Guiding Tech, and I'll see you in the next one.